Have you ever looked at someone else's life and thought, I would rather be them? Maybe they seem more confident, successful, attractive, or certain of who they are. Perhaps they speak easily in groups while you remain quiet. They take opportunities without hesitation while you question every decision. They appear comfortable in their own skin while you keep wondering what is wrong with you. At times, it may feel as though everyone else received some important instruction for life that you somehow missed. But self-worth is not the belief that you are better than other people. It is not arrogance, superiority, or the need to prove that you are exceptional. Healthy self-worth is much quieter. It is the ability to say, this is my life. It is imperfect, but it is mine. I have made mistakes, but those mistakes do not erase my value. There are things I still need to learn, but I do not need to hate myself while I am learning them. A person with stable self-worth does not need to believe that they are the most talented, successful, or attractive person in the room. They simply do not feel that someone else's strengths make them less valuable. This sounds simple, but for many people, it is not. From childhood, we are often taught to look first at what is wrong. Teachers mark errors. Parents compare one child to another. Adults notice the unfinished task before they notice the effort. A child brings home a good grade, and someone asks why it was not the highest grade. A child learns to draw, and the drawing is compared to someone else's. A teenager is told, why can't you be more like your sister? Or look how well your friend is doing. The adult may believe this will motivate the child, but comparison rarely teaches confidence. More often, it teaches the child that love and approval depend on becoming someone else. The child begins to think, if I were smarter, calmer, thinner, more talented, or less sensitive, then I would be accepted. But one person cannot become another person. An orange cannot become a banana simply because someone prefers bananas. Two children may sit in the same classroom and still be living completely different realities. One may have slept peacefully, while another heard an argument at home all night. One may learn quickly through reading, while another understands better through movement or conversation. One may be naturally less sensitive to failure, while another feels deeply affected by a single critical look. Comparison ignores context. It treats people as though they are identical objects being measured by one standard. A healthier comparison is between who you are today and who you were before. Did you understand something today that confused you last month? Did you try again after giving up? Did you speak more honestly? Did you recover more quickly from a mistake? Did you do something that once frightened you? Progress may be small, but it is still progress. When a child is learning to write, the first letter may be uneven and incomplete, while the next one may be slightly clearer. Instead of saying, look how much better another child writes, we can say, look at your first attempt, and now look at this one. You are learning. That kind of feedback teaches the child that effort changes ability. It also teaches them to notice their own development instead of living permanently under someone else's shadow. Recognition matters at every age. People sometimes say, why should I praise someone for doing what they were supposed to do? But adults need appreciation too. A person may receive a salary and still feel deeply discouraged if their effort is never noticed. A partner may keep the household running, care for the children, solve practical problems, or support everyone emotionally, and slowly begin to feel invisible. Being appreciated does not mean needing applause for every ordinary action. It means knowing that your effort reaches someone, that your presence matters, and that what you contribute is seen. A simple sentence can have a powerful effect. I noticed how much work you put into this. Thank you for helping. You handled that difficult situation well, or I can depend on you. These words do not create weakness or vanity. They help people recognize their own resources. Many people never learn to see what they do well. They know every weakness, embarrassing memory, and failure. But if you ask them what they value in themselves, they become uncomfortable. They may immediately minimize their strengths by saying, it was nothing. Anyone could have done it, or I was just lucky. When criticism has been familiar for years, appreciation can feel suspicious. A compliment may create anxiety rather than pleasure. You may wonder what the other person wants from you, assume they are exaggerating, or fear that accepting the compliment would make you arrogant. But healthy self-worth includes the ability to receive accurate praise. You can say, "Thank you. I worked hard on that," or "Yes, that is something I do well." Recognizing a strength does not mean believing you have no weaknesses. It means being willing to see the complete picture. People with low self-worth often view themselves through a distorted lens. They remember failure more clearly than success. They replay one humiliating moment for years while forgetting hundreds of ordinary moments when they coped, learned, helped, or succeeded. This mental replay can become a form of self-punishment. You return to the same memory and think, "Why did I say that? Why did I not defend myself? What must they think of me?" The event may have lasted a few minutes, but the punishment continues for years. Reflection can be useful when it helps you understand what happened and make a different choice. Rumination does something else. It repeats the pain without creating movement. It does not ask, "What can I learn?" It says, "This proves something terrible about me." There is an enormous difference between saying, "I made a mistake," and saying, "I am a mistake." Healthy self-worth allows you to separate behavior from identity. You can admit that you acted badly without believing you are permanently bad. You can acknowledge that you failed without treating failure as your final definition. In fact, the stronger your self-worth is, the easier it becomes to admit a mistake. When your entire identity depends on being right, every error feels like a threat. You may deny what happened, blame someone else, hide evidence, avoid the conversation, or pretend not to understand. But when you know that one mistake cannot destroy your value, you can say, "I was wrong. I hurt you. I need to repair this." An apology, however, is not always enough. Saying "I'm sorry" may express regret, but responsibility often requires action. If you damage something, repair it. If your behavior created extra work for someone, help carry that work. If you broke trust, understand that trust may need time and consistency to return. If you spoke cruelly, do not expect one sentence to erase the impact. A meaningful apology may sound like this: "I understand what I did. I see how it affected you. I am not asking you to forget it immediately. Here is what I will do differently. How can I begin making this right?" This does not mean every mistake requires endless guilt. The goal is not punishment, but repair. Guilt is useful only when it points toward responsibility. After that, it should make room for change. Otherwise, guilt becomes another way of remaining focused on yourself. You think constantly about how terrible you feel, while the person who was hurt still receives no repair. Healthy responsibility asks, "What needs to happen now?" This is also one of the ways self-worth grows. You begin trusting yourself when you see that you can face consequences. You do not need to hide from every uncomfortable truth. You can make a mistake and still respond with maturity. You can survive embarrassment, have a difficult conversation, and repair something. Each time you do, you create new evidence about who you are. Many adults carry painful messages from childhood. Perhaps you were repeatedly criticized, ignored, compared to a sibling, or treated as less important because another child needed more attention. Maybe you were expected to be strong, so no one noticed when you were hurting. Perhaps you were praised only for achievement or received attention only when something went wrong. These experiences can influence self-worth for many years. Some people become perfectionists. Some become invisible. Some search constantly for approval. Others reject closeness before anyone has the chance to reject them. A person may avoid opportunities because failure feels unbearable. They tell themselves they are not interested. But beneath that decision is fear. If I do not try, I cannot prove that I am inadequate. Low self-worth can appear as shyness, but it can also appear as defensiveness, anger, control, jealousy, or arrogance. Sometimes the person who constantly speaks about their superiority is not deeply confident. They may be trying to protect themselves from the fear of being ordinary, weak, or unimportant. Healthy self-worth does not need to dominate. It does not need another person to become smaller. It creates more tolerance because someone else's success is not experienced as a personal attack. When you are more understanding toward yourself, you often become more understanding toward others. You know that people make mistakes, that ability develops at different speeds, and that not every awkward moment reveals someone's entire character. At the same time, self-worth does not mean tolerating mistreatment. It does not mean telling yourself that everything is acceptable. A person who values themselves can say, "This is not how I want to be treated. I made a mistake, but I do not deserve humiliation. I understand your disappointment, but I will not accept cruelty. I care about this relationship, and I also care about myself." Self-worth creates boundaries because you no longer believe that love must be purchased through self-abandonment. But what happens when a person did not receive this foundation in childhood? Are they permanently damaged? No. Childhood matters, but it is not the only place where identity is formed. Human beings continue learning through relationships, work, books, mentors, friends, therapy, failure, responsibility, and life experience. A supportive teacher can change the way a child sees themselves. A coach may recognize an ability that the family overlooked. A friend may offer the first experience of being accepted without comparison. A healthy partner may help someone realize that disagreement does not always lead to abandonment. Sometimes another person's belief in you becomes the bridge toward believing in yourself. But eventually, adulthood asks something more. It asks you to participate in your own development. Your parents may not have taught you confidence. They may not have shown you how to handle failure. They may have passed down fear, criticism, or shame. That was not your fault. But once you become aware of the pattern, responsibility for what happens next gradually becomes yours. This is not always fair. People who received a healthy foundation begin from a different place. They may find it easier to trust, speak, fail, and recover. Others must learn these skills later. But unfair does not mean impossible. There is a point at which explaining your past can either support change or prevent it. Understanding why you struggle can bring relief. It can help you stop blaming yourself for reactions that once developed as protection. But if the explanation becomes a permanent reason not to act, it turns into a prison. You may say, "I cannot trust because of my childhood. I cannot speak up because my parents criticized me." Or, "I cannot change because no one taught me how." These statements may contain truth, but they are incomplete. A more complete version is, "This is difficult because of what I experienced, and now I need to learn something I was not taught." You may need support from a book, conversation, class, mentor, trusted friend, or professional. Not every difficulty requires therapy, but there are times when help is necessary. Imagine falling into a hole so deep that you cannot climb out alone. You may struggle, search for a foothold, and try everything you know, but eventually, the most intelligent action is not to keep proving that you can do it alone. It is to call for help. Asking for help is not evidence of failure. It is evidence that you understand the situation. Sometimes a friend can offer perspective. Sometimes a family member can support a practical decision. Sometimes professional help is needed because the problem is too painful, complicated, or deeply rooted to manage alone. Strength does not mean never needing anyone. It means knowing when independence has stopped being useful. Self-worth is also closely connected to the way people cope with emotional pain. Some people use food, alcohol, drugs, compulsive shopping, gambling, work, social media, or constant relationships to change the way they feel about themselves. The behavior may provide temporary confidence, relief, numbness, or belonging. A person who feels shy may drink and suddenly become talkative. Someone who feels inadequate may spend money to appear successful. Someone who feels empty may search constantly for attention. The behavior becomes a kind of emotional medicine. The problem is that the relief does not solve the original wound. It often creates new consequences: shame, debt, health problems, broken trust, lost work, or damaged relationships. Then the person feels even worse about themselves and needs the same escape again. The cycle becomes, I feel inadequate. I use something to escape that feeling. The behavior creates harm. The harm lowers my self-worth further. I need more escape. This is why lasting change often requires asking, what was this behavior doing for me? What did I feel before I reached for it? Did it give me courage, relief, belonging, silence, confidence, or a break from self-criticism? If the deeper need is never understood, removing the behavior may leave the person feeling exposed and empty. Recovery involves more than stopping. It also involves building a life in which the old medicine is no longer the only source of relief. For some people, this requires treatment. It may require accepting that moderation is no longer safe. That can be painful because the mind often says, other people can do this. Why can't I? But self-worth does not mean proving that you can do everything other people do. It means making decisions based on reality. If something repeatedly destroys your peace, health, or relationships, refusing it may be an act of self-respect. You do not have to solve the rest of your life today. Sometimes the most helpful decision is simply, not today. Today I will not drink. Today I will ask for support. Today I will tell the truth. Today I will not hide. Tomorrow can be faced when it arrives. Healthy self-worth is built through these small acts of honesty. It grows when you keep promises to yourself, admit what you do not know, ask a question instead of pretending, and learn something new without feeling ashamed that you did not already know it. It grows when you take responsibility without turning responsibility into self-hatred. Notice progress and stop comparing your entire life to someone else's best moment. You may never become the person you once believed you had to be. You may not be the most confident person in every room. You may still feel fear before certain conversations and remember painful moments. But self-worth does not require the complete absence of insecurity. It means insecurity is no longer in charge. You can feel uncertain and still act. You can feel embarrassed and still learn. You can feel afraid and still speak. You can regret the past and still build something different. Perhaps the most important question is not, do I feel confident all the time? It is, do I remain on my own side when life becomes difficult? When you fail, do you guide yourself or attack yourself? When you are afraid, do you listen or shame yourself? When you need help, do you ask or hide? When someone succeeds, do you use it as proof that you are behind or as evidence that people grow in different directions? Self-worth is not created by one compliment, one success, or one perfect childhood. It is built through a long relationship with yourself. A relationship based on honesty rather than illusion, responsibility rather than blame, compassion rather than indulgence, and growth rather than comparison. You are allowed to recognize what hurt you. You are allowed to understand how the past shaped you. But you are also allowed to become more than the conclusions you formed when you were young. You do not have to remain the child who was compared, ignored, criticized, or misunderstood. You can become the adult who notices effort, gives encouragement, repairs mistakes, asks for help, chooses better relationships, and learns to say, I am not perfect, but I am not worthless. I am still learning, but I am not lost. I have made mistakes, but I can repair what can be repaired. This is my life, and I am willing to take care of it. What has influenced your self-worth the most? Childhood criticism, comparison, relationships, failure, or the way you speak to yourself today? Share your thoughts in the comments without revealing anything you would rather keep private. Your perspective may help someone else recognize that they are not alone. And if you enjoy calm, thoughtful videos about psychology, self-worth, emotional healing, responsibility, and personal growth, subscribe to the channel for more.